That is a long story. To cut it short, my husband, Thomas Risse, he is a former professor of the University of Wyoming, the political science department. In 1993, I believe, he was here for a year before he returned to Germany. So when we started dating, the first thing he did is put me on a plane and brought me here. So that was in 1996. So I immediately fell in love with the place. And so we kept coming back at least every other year. And at some point, we simply decided to buy a place. My name is Tanja Börzel. I'm professor of political science at University of Berlin at the Otto Suhr Institute for Political Science, where I hold the chair for European politics. So that's essentially my area of expertise. And I'm also directing a major research center that focuses on what we call contestations or challenges to the liberal international, but also the liberal domestic order. The first thing I fell in love with was essentially, the open skies, the kind of wide landscape. It's just beautiful. And we really started out in Laramie. So we didn't go like most people go to Yellowstone and Grand Teton. We went there too, but we started off in Laramie. And the second day, we went up to the snowy range. So we hiked up Medicine Bow Peak, and it's just beautiful. And the second thing I fell in love with are the people. People are great. It's a big state, but it's a small state because you have 600,000 people living in a territory is the size of the Federal Republic of Germany, so West Germany before unification. Then you have the university folks, but you also have people who might be affiliated somehow with the university, but then work in completely different areas. And great food, great restaurants, great bars. Laramie is just a fun place to be. One of the things I really appreciate being in Wyoming, because if you want to understand American politics, you have to understand how the American heartland works. And if you want to understand how Donald Trump could become president of the United States, there's no point in spending time on the East and the West Coast. You really have to come here. And so I think 80% of my friends are Trump voters. And so what I was most surprised by is not only how great people they are, but if you talk to them and you discuss politics, you can have an argument with them. Most of the time I don't agree with their ideas about politics, but at least it helped me understand why people whom I like, who are intelligent, vote for people like Trump. Again, if you want to get to know both sides of the political spectrum and understand how the polarization has come about and what are the possible limits of overcoming polarization, this is the place to be, rather than on the East or the West Coast. There is an academic community. You talked about it. It's great graduate students and students in general who take an interest in these questions, and you get great discussions. And you also get, and that is something which again you would not necessarily expect, is a very international community of students. You have students from all over the world, from regions that, people from Kazakhstan or Morocco, or you wouldn't necessarily expect, even on the East or the West Coast, right? So you get a variety of perspective from students and from faculty that works on these issues. On the ground, here where actually these contestations happen, I'm directing a major research center that wants to find out why democracy, rule of law, human rights, why these institutions have become increasingly under pressure, not only in the United States and in Europe, but essentially it's a global phenomenon. Again, if you want to understand why that is, I think Wyoming and the University of Wyoming is a great place to be. In fact, my cluster has 3 partner institutions in the United States, or 4 maybe. We have Princeton on the East Coast, we have Berkeley and Stanford on the West Coast, and we have the University of Wyoming, American heartland. And we did this deliberately because, as I said before, you cannot understand American politics if you only talk to one end of the political spectrum. Well, I grew up in a city that has more people than the whole entire state of Wyoming. So I'm not necessarily a city person, but it's urban, right? And that is part of the attraction here. It's very quiet. You really slow down. That's why we spend so much time here. I really try to get away from Berlin as much as I can. Not because I don't like Berlin. Berlin is a great city, but it's a very hectic life. Professionally, but also culturally, there's so many things you can do. So here it's really exact the opposite. So you have time, you slow down, you enjoy. It's a perfect contrast. between my very busy life in Berlin and my very quiet life in Wyoming. Well, I mean, Happy Jack up there is a fantastic, I mean, it's a wonderful recreation area. I mean, for any kind of activity, running, hiking, biking, and horseback riding. In the winter, you can do snowshoeing, cross country. I mean, it's great in terms of outdoor activities. It's fantastic. And then sometimes we used to do it, went up to the snowy range, but in terms of distance you need to cover, you have to haul the horses up the mountain, so Happy Jack is closer to town. We live in Centennial, and so 10 minutes you're up in the snowy range, which has terrific trails, and just hiking up to Medicine Bow Peak is amazing.